All right. So, welcome everybody to another episode of Capitalize on Retirement. Today, we have a pretty interesting topic, and we're going to talk about a really big number here, $84 trillion. So, first question, how many zeros are in 84 trillion?
I tried to write it down earlier, and
it's a lot.
I think I got it wrong.
It's 12, I think. But we're going to talk about the great wealth transfer that is coming over the next 20 years.
Yeah, so I think this is something that we've really started to weave into the conversations that we have with the families that we serve. You know, if you're going to be passing money on, or if you're going to have money in your family for generations, because some of the families that we work with, they've done such a good job of saving and accumulating assets that they're going to have a big pile of assets that they do pass on. And that's all part of that $84 trillion wealth transfer that's coming our way.
Yeah, it's going to be the largest wealth transfer in history. And I think the main reason why we wanted to do this is families aren't really talking about it.
No. And there's a lot of risks. I mean, this is a great problem to have, but the government knows this. Right? They're not going to give us the strategies to help us in the most efficient way. They want to collect as much tax dollars as they possibly can. And they want us to make mistakes, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to talk about today is just how do we make sure we're not making these mistakes, and how do we do this in the most efficient way?
Yeah. And I think to start with that, let's talk about the assets that are going to be transferred from this baby boomer generation to the next generation.
Yeah. So some of the assets are going to be, obviously houses, homes,
yep.
Right? People have bought homes. I want to say, I just talked to one of the families that we work with the other day, and in the 80s, they bought a house for $200,000.
Yep.
And that's valued at over $850,000
yep.
today.
Yep.
So the value of homes are going up over time, and boomers have really benefited from buying homes a long time ago. Retirement accounts. Retirement accounts have grown, especially over the past few years, and they've just put money into these accounts. They've worked for the past 30 or 40 years, and those accounts have just continued to grow over time. So those retirement accounts are getting larger and larger.
And there's a big tax bill owed on those, so we'll talk about that a little later.
Businesses. That's one that we see all the time. I mean, people are growing their businesses, and these businesses are becoming valuable. So we see that as a huge transfer of wealth in the next 20 years. And then just investment portfolios, right? Everyday brokerage accounts, joint brokerage accounts, savings accounts. I mean, these things are growing as well over time. So those are the main types of things that will be passed down.
Yeah, I think I saw an estimate on this $84 trillion. I think the business valuation on that is around $20 trillion. So about a quarter of that is held in privately owned businesses, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking your equity markets or your capital markets. We're talking about privately held businesses, about a quarter of that. So obviously there's a lot of planning around that, from trust planning to generational planning. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about there. Maybe we'll do that on another one. But I think it's important to know which accounts will pass to that next generation.
Yeah.
The reason why all this is happening, and like you mentioned, I mean, these are good problems, but baby boomers built enormous wealth.
Yeah.
I mean, they really, really did. Now, they had very long bull markets ahead of them, so the market was really good. I mean, obviously, there's been downturns, but it's been a really good market.
Definitely.
While they were good savers. You mentioned earlier, real estate appreciation. Real estate appreciation was huge. I mean, we see it all the time. People have bought these houses in the 80s and 90s.
Right.
And they've just doubled, tripled, quadrupled in time.
It's unfortunate for, some of the millennials buying houses today, where housing prices are almost unaffordable.
Yep.
But it's great for the people that actually do own the houses. So I think the biggest issue that we see, and that's what we're going to talk about in today's podcast, is most families have never actually had the conversation about wealth transfer. Yep. And if you're not planning for this and you're not having these conversations, you could really be making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, and a lot of the times, like, families avoid talking about money.
Yeah.
Right? We understand that, like, parents don't want to share what they have with their kids, right? And children kind of feel uncomfortable asking.
Yeah.
So it is a tough conversation. It's always been kind of open in our household because our dad was an advisor, we're advisors. So like,
we
We've
talk
never
about
really had
money.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of like what we talk about at dinner, where most people don't, right?
Yeah.
But it is an uncomfortable conversation, and the result of that is just being unprepared.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the statistics, I think maybe 80%, if I read that right, 80% of advisors do not have the conversation about wealth transfer. And so what do you think happens when that, younger generation ends up getting the money? Well, they don't have any planning.
Yep.
So they're looking for someone who is going to help them.
Yeah, they want that. They want to have a relationship with the advisor and different things like that. I think that's extremely important, so we know what's going on. And
Yeah.
I think it also helps align the parents' goals with the children.
Yeah.
And we talk about it all the time, like part of our, we're here to help facilitate those conversations. So anybody who listens to this who is uncomfortable, I mean, we're happy to help facilitate that conversation to that next generation.
Yeah, and I think parents, they don't want to have that conversation because maybe they don't want their kids to know what they have. Yeah. I say this all the time. If you feel like they can't, if you feel like they're not going to do the right things with it, well, there's obviously planning involved with that. There's trust that you could put the money into so they don't get to spend it all right away. But I think having the conversation up front is the most important thing so everybody can get on the same page.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of, to put it in a nutshell, is the conversation is important, and families tend to avoid it because it's difficult, right?
It is, yeah.
But a wealth transfer without preparation, it's just going to create confusion to that next generation. I think everybody kind of being aligned and on the same page is only going to help things.
Yeah, and we're going to get into, some of the things that we should be looking at, but just on that topic, you didn't save all of this money to just have it go to taxes, or lose it in the market because you're not informed. So we just want to make sure that we are doing the right things with it. And like you said, having a coordinated approach really makes a difference.
Well, let's talk about that, because you talked about taxes, and I mentioned about privately held businesses, but most of that $84 trillion that is going to pass to this next generation, most of that is going to be held in tax-deferred retirement accounts, which are, those are our 401ks, our IRAs, our 403b. So let's talk about the issues with those accounts. I know we've talked about it before, but let's make sure we're reiterating that message as we're talking about wealth transfer.
Yeah, so let's just talk about the tax-deferred accounts. Most advisors and most CPAs have told their clients to put money into these tax-deferred retirement accounts for their entire career. Mm-hmm. And when you put money into a tax-deferred retirement account, you get to defer the tax bill, right? And then you defer the tax bill and it grows over time. And then when you take that money out, that's when you pay the tax bill. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem with those accounts is when they pass to the next generation, and I know you know this, but you have to take that money out over 10 years.
Yep.
And so what the government is trying to do is they're trying to tax you as much as they can on those accounts, and they're playing chess with your money. If you don't know they're playing chess, you're probably losing the game.
Well, let's put some math behind that, right? Let's say I have a $2 million IRA when I'm gone, and let's say I have one child. Well, they're going to have to take out, without any growth, $200,000 per year and pay ordinary income taxes on it. Well, our tax code, we go from 10 to 12 to 22 to 24. So as my income gets larger and as I have to take more money out of that, that's forcing higher taxation on my already high earned income, plus the income I'm taking out of these accounts just as an inheritance, which, the government becomes a huge partner on that.
Yeah.
And that's what we are trying to help people to avoid. But again, like, the government is playing chess on these accounts.
Yeah. So like you said, if you have to take out $200,000 a year every single year, and maybe you're in your peak earning years when you're doing that, like some of us will inherit money when we're in our 50s.
Yep.
So if I'm in my 50s, hopefully I'm in my peak earning years. And on top of that, I have to take out that much money out of this retirement account, and it goes on top of all of my other income. I mean, the government knows that. That's why they made it 10 years.
Yep.
And they want to try to collect as much tax dollars and push you into higher tax brackets. as much as they can.
That's a good point. So let's talk about what that 10-year roll. So that 10-year roll was enacted in 2020, and it's called the Secure Act. And before that, you used to be able to stretch out an inherited IRA over your entire lifetime. So if I inherited an IRA at 50 before the Secure Act was in place, I would be able to stretch that out over my life expectancy.
Right.
And that was actually very valuable because
you stretch out the tax bill.
Yeah, you stretch out the tax bill. Well, now we can't do that. They've compressed that down to a 10-year period. So we'll be forced to pay higher taxes. I think the main thing, and we talk about this all the time, if you have IRAs and 401ks and 403bs and all these tax deferred accounts, we all want to kick the can down the road.
Yeah.
Because it feels better when we do that, right? Doing nothing kind of just makes us feel better. But the problem is it's not a matter of if we're going to pay taxes on these accounts. It's a matter of when we're going to pay taxes on these accounts because someone will.
Right. So let's talk about that. We talked about the problems. Let's talk about some of the solutions. Mm-hmm. So let's just assume that I'm retired or our parents are retired. And let's assume they're in the 22% tax bracket. Mm-hmm. Well, if they start looking at this and saying, okay, I'm in the 22% tax bracket, but my kids might be in a higher tax bracket when they actually inherit this money. Mm-hmm. Would I rather our family pay 22% in taxes on these accounts or 30+% in taxes on these accounts? And so you start to look at it from a family perspective instead of just me and my situation.
Yep.
And that's why it's so important to have those conversations between the parents and the children.
Yeah. And that kind of solution to that and the reference you're making is strategic Roth conversions. Right?
Absolutely.
If I'm in 22, as the parent, my children are in the 32, 35, 37, what makes sense for me to really consider taking money from my IRA, paying the taxes at 22, and moving that to a tax-free account.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's less money going into the government's hands and more money in my family's pocket. So I haven't met anybody yet who said I would rather the government have a little more than my beneficiary.
Yeah, and what happens in the market over a long period of time? I mean, compliance probably doesn't want us to say this, but typically over time, the market has historically grown over time.
Yep.
Right? And so when you think about that, let's say I have $1 million balance in my retirement account now. Well, would you rather pay taxes on $1 million, or if that account grows over 10 or 20 years, $2 million down the road, and have your kids maybe pay taxes on the higher amount?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's better to pay those taxes, get it to a tax-free account,
Yep.
and have that money tax-free moving forward.
And in the Roth IRA, your beneficiaries receive the money tax-free.
That's right.
Which is tremendous. And if we think about it, right, they still have to abide by the Secure Act and the Roth IRA.
I think coordinating that tax approach, and there's a lot of different things that you could do here. Like some of the families that we work with, we won't get into this, but required minimum distributions is something that we do a lot of planning around.
Yep.
And so some of the families that we work with are already there. They're already taking their RMDs.
Yep.
And they're forced to take money out of these retirement accounts. Well, some of our clients say, hey, I want to pass this money on to my kids and grandkids. And so maybe we take that RMD and we buy life insurance.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that's what everybody should go ahead and do, but if you want to pass on tax-free money, you're already forced to take money out. Well, let's move it to a tax-free account. So maybe it's a combination of moving money to Roth, potentially buying life insurance for a tax-free legacy. And we're not sitting here saying that everybody should buy life insurance, right? Most of the families that we work with, they don't need life insurance at this point. But once again, it's a tool. If you need it, it's available.
It's more of a tax strategy for the families that we serve than it is family protection. I have life insurance to protect my family while I'm in my earning years.
Right.
You know.
Exactly.
I think the next piece of this, let's talk about strategic gifting. And this one, we have a lot of families who are gifting money to their children. And, you know, one thing that I think John Maxwell said this, I want to do the giving while I'm living so I know where it's going. And I always thought that was pretty cool. And that applies to charitable giving money to your kids. But I think let's start with gifting money to children. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is that $19,000 gift exclusion. Let's talk about how that works.
Yeah, so essentially the limits as of 2026, you can gift up to $19,000 per year per person.
Yep.
So if I'm a married couple, me and my wife, we can give $19,000 each to whoever we want to gift it to.
Yep.
Right? Before it starts counting towards our gift tax exemption.
Yep. And that gift tax exemption, so there's the gift exemption that is not reported, and that's at $19,000 per person. If we can, and we're absolutely allowed to go above that, the lifetime gift exemption is $15 million per person.
Yeah.
Which is really large, but that's like right now it's really large, but our country's in a pretty high deficit. We kind of feel like that can eventually come down. But the way that works, you can actually give $15 million throughout your lifetime to any or multiple individuals without paying any tax on that.
Yeah. So that's a good point. So I get this question a lot. I'm sure you do. What happens if I do gift more than $19,000? What if I want to gift more than that? Well, you can gift more than $19,000, but you have to file Form 709 on your tax return. And that goes toward what the excess above $19,000 will go towards your gift tax limits.
Yeah, so it just basically takes that $15 million down by whatever you gifted above the $19,000.
Exactly.
But yeah, a lot of people think if you gift more than $19,000, it's taxable. It's absolutely not taxable.
Right.
You're just knocking down your exclusion.
Now, the problem is you can't gift retirement accounts, unfortunately.
Yes.
So it has to be after-tax accounts. So if you want to gift money, it can't be directly from the IRA unless you're gifting to a charity.
Yep.
So if you're over 70 and a half, you can gift money through a QCD, qualified charitable distribution, directly to a charity and not pay any taxes on it.
Yep. No, I mean, that's a really important concept. And anybody who is 70 and a half and charitably inclined, QCDs or qualified charitable distributions are a great tool. I think, as we're kind of moving through this, I think one of the big things and one of the takeaways is going to be educating your heirs. Right? Educating your heirs on financial literacy and how you got where you are, right? Having the conversation about being a good steward of this money. We work with a lot of families who have created money that will be here for generations, and it's important that we make sure those generations know how to be a good steward of that money like they were.
I think that's the most underrated thing that you can teach the next generation. Because if you think about it, a lot of the boomers grew up and they maybe their parents didn't have as much.
They were the Depression era.
That was the Depression era. So their parents didn't have as much. They grew up very frugal. And so they saved and had very much discipline to save every single year and through every single paycheck. But they never pass that down to their kids. So their kids see, okay, my parents have decent amount of money in their retirement accounts, but they don't pass down those principles. And in my opinion, if you don't pass down the principles are more important than the money.
Yep.
If you pass down the principles, then they can go do it themselves. If you just pass down the money without the principles, in my opinion, they're going to blow it.
There could be issues, yeah. I mean, they're not going to be a good steward. I totally agree with that. I think the principles are more important than the assets that are being passed on. They have to know how you got there, how it worked, the hardships that you went through. I mean, those are all things that should be shared. I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's great to share that.
Yeah. So I think the last part of this, I mean, there's a lot of planning involved, but one of the things is passing on a legacy. What do you want the wealth to accomplish? Right? If I'm passing on a legacy, what do I want this wealth to accomplish?
We hear a lot of different things around here. Like, one of the more common ones is I want to make sure my grandchildren's colleges are taken care of, right? Especially parents who are educated and went to school and they value that. Hey, I want to make sure my grandchildren's colleges are taken care of.
Yeah.
Or I want to make sure opportunities are taken care of. Or, hey, I owned a business. I want my children to have money to be able to be an entrepreneur and start their own business.
Yeah, and I know I read this book. It was about the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts. So they were two of the wealthiest families. And the Vanderbilts went broke, I think, after 3 generations of family. The Rockefellers still today are, I think they're still on the Forbes like top 100 list.
Yeah, they're one of the wealthiest families.
Yeah, so they're still one of the wealthiest families. And when I look at that, I start looking at what are the things that they did. Well, they have principles, right? They have trust set up. And, they're not allowed to spend all of the money. They can use some of it for certain things, but there are stipulations in the trust where they have to hit age limits, so they can't spend a lot of the money until they hit certain ages. They have to get education to spend the money. So there's a lot of different stipulations that they put in place. Now, that's an extreme example.
Yeah.
But some of the families that we work with, they want to make sure that what they built is not just going to go away in the second or third generation.
I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the common misconceptions is that, hey, I haven't saved money, to use your reference. I'm not a Rockefeller or a Vanderbilt, but these people have amassed quite a bit of wealth that can really help multiple generations behind them. And I think by being a good steward and having the proper planning in place, and this is where you coordinate with the estate planning attorney and the CPAs, by having that trust that has certain provisions in there.
Yeah.
Right? That really helps perpetuate the next couple generations. And it also helps accomplish your goals, right? We call it control from the grave.
Yeah.
Right? If the parent doesn't want their child to spend money on anything outside of education or maintenance or health standards, they can put that in there.
Yep.
I mean, you could kind of control what you want to happen.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you can make sure that the money stays in your family, right? In case there's a divorce or whatever it may be. So there's all kind of things you could do. I think having those conversations up front makes it much cleaner on the back end when the family is all involved together.
I couldn't agree more. And I think this is a very important one because we are on the front end or the beginning stages of this massive wealth transfer, bigger than our country has ever seen. I mean, $84 trillion, it's a big number, 12 zeros. So I think it's important that we are having those conversations. I mean, as an advisor, we need to be making sure we're communicating these conversations with our clients. And I know us and our team, we do that every day. But if you're listening to this, make sure you're talking to your family and having those conversations.
Yeah. So before we wrap this up, I just want to come up with maybe 2 or 3 things that people should be looking at right now, especially if they're looking at how do we coordinate this if we are going to have money that could pass on. And I think the first couple of things for me, a lot of the times we see people are invested the wrong way. Right? Sometimes they're too conservative. Sometimes they're not conservative enough. And if you feel like I'm going to have enough and I'm good in retirement, I have enough saved, well, some of that money might be geared towards, I want to pass this on to my kids and grandkids. And maybe you need to make that a little bit more aggressive so that it can grow over time and you pass on a bigger legacy to them if that's your goal anyway.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think the other thing is, a lot of people who come in to see us for the first time, they don't have a retirement plan yet. So, and one of their big concerns is, am I going to be okay? Which that has to be the front end of this, right? You can't worry about your estate until we know you're going to be okay. But they want to help their children. They just don't know if they have the ability to. So I think having that retirement plan in place, knowing that your income is going to be okay, that gives you the ability to help your children if you want.
Yeah. And if you do it wrong and you run out of money, well, you don't have to worry about passing money on anyway. So you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself first.
Yep.
And then, figuring out how to pass it on. I think the second one, and where I see people make the biggest mistake, is taxes. And we talked about that. So figure out your tax plan, work with your advisor, your CPA. Do we have any tax opportunities? And can I pass on tax-free money versus a tax burden?
And will it be less to the government than my heirs, right? Because the government's going to get their cut. Yeah. And they're going to get it now or later. I think, when we talk about tax planning, it's easy to do nothing.
Right.
It's really easy to kind of just put your hands under and not do anything. But by exploring those opportunities that are in the tax code, I was listening to a podcast this morning. There's 1,700 incentives in the tax code. Now, you probably don't need 1,700. Right? But there's incentives out there that we should be exploring and looking at and taking advantage of.
Yeah. We're not for avoiding your taxes.
No.
We just don't want to overpay.
Avoidance is bad.
Yeah.
Planning's good.
Right. We just don't want to overpay. So, and the last thing I would say is just looking at my estate plan. Do I need a will? Do I need a trust? And how do these things all work together for me in my situation.
I couldn't agree more, but I think if there's one out of those three, kind of the overarching of that is work with an advisor who can help coordinate and facilitate those areas of planning together, right? Because you don't really want to go to someone to build you an income plan, and then I got to go to a tax guy, and then I got to go to a estate planning person, because those are every year we got to do that. Like, these things need to be adjusted and monitored. So make sure you're working with someone who understands retirement planning.
Yeah, and when you're working with a family, and you know this, but we had a family that we were working with, and he was making a lot of income. So his CPA was telling him, put money into a tax-deferred account and get the tax deduction now. Well, he didn't know. The CPA never asked him, how much do your parents have, and are they going to pass money on? Well, we told him, hey, you might want to put money into the Roth and pay the tax now because of what you're going to get on the back end. So that's why you need to coordinate both sides of it.
No, couldn't agree more. I think this was a really good one. I know we have an event coming up on wealth transfer, so we're hitting this one hard because we know we're kind of on the front end of this, and we want to make sure we're prepared for this, and we want to make sure the families who listen to us and who we serve are just as well prepared. So
we want to keep more money in their pockets.
That's it. That's it. Thank you, guys.